Hello and welcome. I am with a guest, one of my favorite guests really, but I have not interviewed her for 10 years. So it's been a long time. Saroya is back with me. She is now running for re-election for the Blaine City Council. She's been on the council how many years?
Just a year and a half.
Okay, and so this re-election carries you over.
Right, it'll be a 4-year term.
Oh, okay, okay, good. Hopefully she'll be the councilwoman in Blaine. I've been so impressed with her leadership qualities and style, and she has won so many kudos and awards. I just want to mention a few. She was awarded the Governor's Community Service Award. She was a Bush Fellow, which is quite an exciting award. She was the Minnesota Jaycee's Young Leader of the Year Award. She was the St. Cate's Alumni Award, and many, many, many more. But congratulations as we look back here. Well, campaigning is not an easy life. Can you just tell us a little bit what the day in the life of a campaigner is like for you, Lori?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. So I got involved in politics in 2020. It was right after the pandemic. And for me, it was, my background is advocacy. I've done a lot of advocacy in the community, and it was really a way to continue that advocacy. So it is like a full-time job. It's
I bet.
Campaigning, and even because I'm on the city council now, so there's a lot of day-to-day work that takes place, doing the city council business, and then on top of that, campaigning. So right now, basically my day starts, after the kids go to school.
And you've got 3 children.
I have 3 kids, yep, 14, 8, and 4. So they keep me very busy.
They all have needs of different,
Yeah, they're very different in terms of what their interests are, what their activities are. So where, my son plays soccer, he plays the trumpet, he's in debate, and then my daughter does karate and the flute, and then my younger one is in swimming and
gymnastics.
So we're pretty much, trying to manage their schedules and their
chauffeur
yes,
parents.
Absolutely. So my husband plays a big role in that as well.
So,
but in terms of campaigning, it really is a full-time job, like I said, and we start in the morning. And there's a lot of people that we have that are emailing us that are really excited about the campaign. And I think what has really helped me is having a team in place. I have an amazing campaign manager. I have an events coordinator. I have a fundraising coordinator. And I'm forgetting. I have an advisory board that is extremely helpful. And so having that team in place really frees me up to actually be out there at the doors and be door knocking and talking to residents.
And it would also, I would think, Lori, be psychologically really helpful to have this sense of a team behind you.
Yes.
You're not out there alone. You're not doing this just, solo, but that team you can lean on, hopefully.
Absolutely. Right. And yeah, that's, and I think for city council races, it's a very local race, so it can be challenging sometimes to get volunteers, and, because everybody wants to work on the big, statewide, glamorous races, and, but these are important too. There's so many decisions that are made on the local level, and it's so important, especially in Blaine with, the demographic changes and everything that we're going through right now in Blaine.
How big is Blaine now? What size city?
Yeah, it's over 70,000 people.
Is it? It's
really
bigger
grown.
than I had realized.
Yeah, we're the largest city in Anoka County. We're the top in the top 9 among cities in the state.
After having served as a statewide leader and as a national figure too, is working at the local level as rewarding for you as being more involved at a higher level, just governmentally?
Yeah, I feel like it's more hands-on. It allows me to, I know, now I'm door knocking houses the second time around, and a lot of them, I've met with before. I know, like, they're, something about them. And so it's just like
Yeah.
that connection. Actually, I've lived in Blaine for 20 years, but to actually know people and know what their struggles are and what their concerns are, and to be able to actually help them resolve those issues it's so amazing. And so that's the part of it that I
that
love.
would be a part that would be I would think, add a lot of sort of interest and fun
Right.
compared to not knowing many of your constituents as a state
Absolutely,
leader.
right. And I think for me, the reason, the way I got involved was, during the pandemic, a lot of people were struggling. And I live in a part of town that is the older part of town. There's a lot of people on limited income. There's a lot of people, that are struggling. And so I remember one woman in my neighborhood, she had asked for, and it was during the pandemic, so it was already difficult to find, resources and things, but it was her son's birthday, and she was looking for a birthday cake for her son. And, she didn't have the funding, and she couldn't really figure out how to make this cake happen. And so I helped her. I got her the cake, but it felt like that was just a Band-Aid. Like, it wasn't really a solution. And it really got me thinking, how many other mothers are there that are struggling, and what happens next year when this kid's birthday comes up. And so that was really my first step into politics, where, we need
One
people that
small
will make
kind of gesture, though,
Absolutely.
like a turning point, really, for you, right?
Yeah, and to know that this is my neighbor, like, these are people that live in my community, like, I firmly believe that, we cannot truly be happy if other people are suffering. And that just, was, I can't, celebrate my own kids' birthdays when I know that my neighbors are struggling and can't, find cake and afford, just something as simple as a birthday cake. And so how do we handle that on a strategic level, right? Instead of putting out little fires, how do we address that? How do we empower people in our community and, create jobs and create that infrastructure where they have access to opportunities?
Are you finding any pushback because of being a Muslim leader, being female?
Yes.
Is there?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so. So when I joined the council, one of the first things a council member said to me was, quote, "What are you even doing here?" And
who said that to you?
Another council member.
Oh, no.
And so I think it was a good opportunity for me to reflect on what am I doing there, right? And so I think it really motivates me when people, bring up things like that. And so I thought, like, what am I doing here? And I went back to the Senator Paul Wellstone quote, and he said that politics isn't about power games or big money, it's about helping people. And that's what I'm doing there, right? I'm there to help people in my community and build a future that is strong and where everybody is successful and thriving.
Could you go back to that council member and give him that answer?
Yeah, well, I think, me being on that council, I'm often the only one that is looking out for taxpayers, for people's funding. I'm the one that's asking the tough questions about conflict of interest, about how our money is being spent, about wasteful spending. So, and I think, my law degree really comes in handy.
I bet.
And
I did not mention that, did I, in the intro? I should have mentioned that.
It's fine. And I'm able to, have those debates and have intelligent conversations about some of the policies that are being passed and the ordinances, and really, have intelligent discussions. Because that's, at the end of the day, it's about what decisions are we making that are going to benefit our residents, and, how is it going to improve their quality of life? And that's really what I come back to.
Well, that gives you a solid sense of a solid base and a solid springboard, doesn't it, really?
Absolutely, right.
Value-laden kind of thing.
Yeah.
Are there any other attorneys on the council besides yourself?
No,
Okay.
there's no one else has a law degree, and And I think, part of it also is, I've traveled, I've studied abroad, I've lived abroad, I've gone to, many different countries as a kid, and I think just even having like that global perspective,
Right.
and and I grew up in southern Iowa in a small, farming community, and so I bring that perspective where I'm able to relate to a lot of people. I grew up in a family, that is very multicultural and very, open to different, cultures and religions, and so that has really benefited me. Like I have friends from literally all over the country, many different
All over
faiths.
the world.
Right, all over the world. So that has helped.
We should mention your parents came here from Pakistan, and you were just were you even born before you?
My parents immigrated in the late 60s, and
okay,
so they moved, they've immigrated in the late 1960s, and they settled in the Midwest. And so so I grew up, as a Midwesterner, and
Right.
a small town. My town was 1,600 people. I grew up, riding horses and surrounded by cornfields, and just it was fun, like farm life. And
But I remember too, Lori, from our earlier interview, that you didn't always have people on your side. I mean, there were people that were fearful,
yeah,
who didn't like differences, who
Yeah.
were worried about your Muslim background. I
Right,
mean,
right.
it's in a way, it's sad to think that we're still not as far away from that as we should be.
Yes. I think change, some people are really, it's difficult for them to accept change, right? So my family was the only immigrant family in our town. We were the only family of color in our town, and we were the only Muslim family in our town. So we did
all kinds of firsts.
Yeah, there's a lot of firsts. Anytime you're the first anything, and I'm seeing that on the
Yes.
council as well. Being the first Muslim on the city council, being the first woman of color on the city council. I mean, there are challenges that come with that, and but I think what I look to is that what is the example that I'm setting for other kids, and kind of paving that way for them and showing them that you can be successful in this.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure that's got to give you a great feeling to think you're a role model for some other young girls and
Yes.
young Muslim children.
absolutely. Well, my own daughter, like she wants to run for president one day, and so
And
so she
she's
has-
8 years old,
she's
right?
8 years old, and when she was 6 years old, when I ran my first race, she door knocked 3,000 doors with me, and she's so good at just engaging
Oh,
with people.
she's
And
a confident young
Yes.
8-year-old, isn't she? That's
Absolutely.
amazing. So 3,000 doors, that must have been over a whole summer?
yeah, it was over several
Probably.
months. So we knocked approximately 6,000 doors. So she did about half
my.
of them with
Oh,
me.
wow, wow. And are people in Blaine, when you're at the door and they open the door, they're maybe not expecting you, are they usually kind and cordial and open to talking?
Yeah, that's interesting you asked that, because the first time I ran, my opponent, who had been on the city council for 30 years, he had, it's intimidation tactics, right? And so he had told me that if I went to the doors, people would slam the door in my face. He told me that I should move to another city that's more diverse and run there. And I never door knock, right? So I didn't really know what to expect. But I had, again, a great team that went with me, that gave me that support. So yeah, I'm happy to report no one has slammed the door in my face. I mean, there are difficult conversations, like people that don't agree politically, or people that do hold, racist or Islamophobic views. I mean, of course, we'll meet people like that. But there are also so many more amazing people that we can have that conversation. And I'm someone who will talk to somebody for 10, 20 minutes and, trying to find, like, what is it that we have in common.
Yes. That seems to be what we're all needing to work harder at.
Absolutely.
Really, the commonalities. But how do your children feel now? Do they feel safe? I mean, because you've had some really threatening kinds of hate mail, haven't you?
Yeah, it's been, honestly, it's intimidation tactics. A lot of the, hostility and the, issues that I experience come more from my opponent and his team rather than the community. Like the Blaine community, it's, I wouldn't run if it was a community that didn't accept me, right? That I would feel
universally
like, right, I wouldn't put
negative.
my time and energy and effort into a community like that. And so I've lived there 20 years, and they're good people. Like at the end of the day, like that's what I come back to. Like there are such, good people that live there. They're sincere, they're hardworking, they're genuine. And if I can play a role in advocating for their interests and for getting them the resources that they need to be successful and have better lives, then I'll do that.
Yeah, you'll do well. Kamala Harris, she's got to be, sort of wind behind your back in a way too, right now. I mean, aren't you inspired by what she's doing, and has that affected you in a pretty direct
Absolutely.
way?
Yeah, I think I'm always inspired by strong women. Because I think it's difficult when you're the first woman of color on in any position, and you kind of have to pave your way, and it's where you kind of feel like you're on your own island. So
right, I'm sure.
So I admire her and respect her for going through that and paving the way for my daughter and others that can now dream and say like, oh, like I could do this too one day.
It's really almost seeming like gender is no longer the issue it was 6 years ago. Now, though, racism and the immigration issue seems to have, gotten out of hand in a big way. We don't have a whole lot of time left. I want to see what you are really hoping that the Blaine Council can do this year that hasn't gotten done, that you're excited about?
Absolutely, yeah. So last time I ran, I made 2 promises. One was the Northtown Mall, because the Northtown Mall, if you've been out there, it's been kind of abandoned. It's been neglected for many years.
I've heard that.
A lot of stores have left. And so that's something I've been working on. We have a new owner of the mall. We're bringing the Asia Mall there. We have like a Spanish Eat Street concept. There's just so many. There's a hotel coming, a coffee roaster, a children's play area. So really just focusing on reviving and revitalizing that whole area. And because it doesn't just benefit the mall, it benefits the entire neighborhood. And so that's something I'm really, have been focusing on for the past year and a half, and I want to see that through, see that completed. And the other big one is Highway 65. Highway 65 in Blaine, in my ward, from 85th to 109th, is considered the most dangerous stretch of highway in the state.
I've heard about that now that you mention that, yes. I don't live near Blaine, but I've driven on 65, of course, and it's a busy street with a lot of stop signs too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very dangerous.
Are people running the red light?
Yeah, it's just too many people, and I think, and this is like one of the things that being more strategic in how we're doing city planning, right? So when when I moved to Blaine, the population was maybe 25,000, and in 20 years we've grown to 70,000. But the highway hasn't changed. Our water facility hasn't changed. We haven't really created a lot of jobs, and so just being strategic in how are we accommodating this growth and benefiting the residents, I think is extremely important. But the Highway 65 project is fully funded, so I'm very excited about that. And that construction will begin in a few months.
Okay, so that's a real feather in your cap and in the council's cap.
Yeah.
We are hearing a lot of worried writing and talk about voting. And as someone who's got a vested interest personally, what are your thoughts, Lori, about mail-in ballots and voting early, voting in person or not? What are some of your thoughts right now? We're taping, I should mention, on September 23rd, so the election is coming up very soon.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I really think it's about just a lack of education around the process. I've spoken with our city clerk, and she's been in that position for over 30 years, and she knows how to run an election. I trust her to run an election.
Yeah.
I trust our Secretary of State to run a proper election. So I think part of it is people that are trying to understand the process, and really that fear of like, will my ballot get lost, and how do these machines work, it's new technology. So I think but at the same time, I think the transparency piece is really key, making sure that we are being transparent in how we're counting votes, and what that process is, to avoid some of those fears and concerns.
Is the mail-in voting at the local level also requiring people to do the outside envelope and have your return address on it? Just
yeah, I'm the type of person that likes to go in person on the November 5th is our election day, so I'll be there in person. I take my girls with me, my son, if he's not at soccer, and then we get our sticker. So so I think people have different preferences in how they approach it. Some people, early voting has started, and some people
just started. Didn't it?
It just started on Friday, September 20th, and so there were a lot of people that participated in that. So there's, so I think we need that flexibility. Like, we need, not everyone can be, available in person. So we need mail-in ballots. We need different options for people to vote.
Yes, that's a good point. And if you are, worried about getting called out of town for a work assignment or something, vote early, right?
Right, absolutely.
Right, yeah. Are there things that you think people should know about you that have been misconceptions, or anything? We've got just a few minutes left. But
I think just, I feel like when a lot of times people are, and I see this on the council a lot of times, where we had actually a proposal for a mosque project, and and it just happened that I was on the city council when this came, and this group was given such a hard time. I mean, they came to us twice, and I had a front row in what was happening, so I was able to call out some of this behavior from the city and really say, look, this is not how this process typically works. Even just where they're seated. Typically, when a developer comes, they're seated at the front of the room. They do their own PowerPoint, and in this case, they were seated in the back, weren't allowed to present, and weren't even addressed until I asked questions. So, so just even, I think, being at that table and using your voice for good is extremely important, and just knowing that. It's at the end of the day, it's about doing the right thing. It doesn't matter. It's a Muslim community now. But it'll be somebody else in the future, and just making sure that we're standing up for each other and doing the right thing.
Do you have any long-range dreams or thoughts about running for higher office, Lori?
It's interesting you asked that. So a lot of people have been asking me, to consider it. But for me right now, it's focusing on city council. There's so much unfinished business, and I feel like I've done a lot in a year and a half, even around the transparency and the addressing some of the conflicts of interest and the fiscal responsibility, making sure we're managing our funding, our resources appropriately, that a lot of the money that Blaine gets is generated in my ward, but how much of that is really staying in Ward 1 to benefit the residents, right? So those are the difficult questions that I'm asking and getting answers to for residents. So I'm confident that even, we're changing how elections are happening in Blaine. There are more people, young people, that are interested in actually filing. It's not just an assumed position where, if someone's been on the council for 30 years, then they're just going to get it.
Isn't it exciting to think of more young people voting and registering to vote?
Yes, absolutely. And actually running for office. I know on our city council the age is 21, and we actually have a 21-year-old running in Ward 2, so just the next ward over. And this young man is so intelligent, and the ideas that he brings to the council they're going to benefit the city immensely.
Yeah, that is exciting. And I mean, 22 is about as young as politicians go, isn't it?
Right.
But how exciting. And yes, if someone is super bright and motivated, why not, you know?
Right.
Why not?
And that's, I know he has just a lot of ideas around youth, like bringing a community center, doing like rec hours for youth, like ideas that the rest of us wouldn't have even thought of.
Right.
So it's we need that perspective.
Right,
we need
do.
diversity and different
And
perspectives.
that will bring in more young people in the future, too, to
Absolutely.
vote and get involved. Well, if someone wants to get a hold of you, either before the election, because we hope to get this out soon, or after the election, and want to, be supportive of what you're doing, how would they reach you, Lori?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to go to my website. It's Vote Saroya, so VOTESAROYA.com. And there's a email, a contact us link there. My email is there. All my information is there.
Okay.
So that's probably and if I do run
Sure.
for higher office, there will be, that will be the same website that I
Okay,
use.
sure. Just update it a bit and,
Yes.
and run with it, huh?
Absolutely.
One final question. We've got less than a minute. But do you think still, given the gender differences in our country, that you have to be above average and really at the high level of excellence to be competitive?
Yeah.
Do you?
Absolutely, and I think as a woman of color, I feel like I have to be 10 steps ahead.
bet.
And even preparing for city council meetings, I'm often the only one that will do on-site visits. when there's a property proposal,
So
I'll talk to
prepare.
people, I'll talk to experts, and I have to be like extra prepared because there is just more scrutiny, there's more challenge in terms of being the only.
We could talk
Woman
more
of color.
about this, couldn't we? Well, thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
coming
much.
back.
Really nice
It's
to see you
great
again.
to see you, and good luck, and we'll be cheering for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me, and I hope you got to know Lori better. I'm one of her big fans, as you can tell. I'll see you next week, and we'll watch for Lori in the news on Election Day. See you next week. Bye-bye.